Is there anything stronger than a community that can take care of its own? Why should our daily needs depend on people who do not live in our community? My name is Khalid Abu-Khadra, and I would like to talk to you about community economic sovereignty. Community economic sovereignty is the capacity of a community to create ethical, resilient, self sustaining economies independent of external influences. So, here you want to have a community that can take care of its own, that is not beholden to any external entity that might extort or exploit your community. So a community that is resilient, that decides its own way of distribution, that's something that should be sought to enable economical autonomy, where you retain wealth, labor, and value locally within the community, where you have resilience and adapt to changing conditions and challenges because you have your own resources and assets to overcome the shifting situations that you encounter, and you have fairness and equity within your community, where the community itself, based on its values, decide how the resources should be allocated, and you have ethical assurances, because you don't want your community to support exploitative or harmful networks, being willingly or unwillingly. So that's also something to keep in mind, and by that you can maintain moral integrity, where you protect shared community values and standards. So the community, when they stand together, they develop their own economies, value chains, and resources and means of production. They can protect themselves from external extorters. So that's something to keep in mind. Examples of economically sovereign communities include Mondragon, from the Basque country, Spain, that is a worker-owned cooperative network created to rebuild the Basque economy, demonstrating how democratic ownership and reinvestment can keep wealth anchored locally. And then there is the Zapatista communities within Mexico. These are indigenous communities that formed autonomous governance and cooperative production, showing how ethical screening and localized systems protect cultural and economic sovereignty. And then, historically speaking, within the Islamic tradition, we have the Medina market during the Prophet, peace be upon him's time, where you have transparent and fair marketplace established to eliminate monopolies, providing a powerful model of ethical trade, accountability, and resilient community economics. And within the Ottoman Empire, you have the Waqf system, which is a centuries long network of community endowments, funding services, offering a self sustaining institutional structure grounded in transparency and moral responsibility. All of these are examples of communities that achieve economical sovereignty, that do not depend on external forces for its own autonomy and economical survival. So these are things that we can reference to see how they develop and learn from. So that's also something to keep in mind. So here I would like to propose 6 guiding principles to how you can develop economical sovereignty. maintain it. So you have source verification, where you want to check your sources before you select them, and you also want local value circulation. So you want to grow from within. You want to make sure that value remains local, and fair distribution. So equity sustains unity. Make sure that the allocation of resources is fair. And adaptive governance. So you need to adjust to endure. So when the times and the conditions are changing, you need to adjust accordingly. And transparent procedures. You want to make sure that the decisions and the procedures being done are done are not done under the table. To maintain trust. So clarity builds trust. And collective moral safeguarding. So you want to protect what is invaluable as a community. So the community must stand together and establish what are their moral red lines. So now I want to go a little bit further into each guiding principle to describe them in more detail. So source verification. So every product and service should be traceable, vetted, and checked for moral, economic, and social implications. The purpose is to prevent supporting harmful networks, ensuring ethical sourcing, and protecting community integrity. So key considerations include confirming full supply chain traceability before approval. So you want to confirm for the root sources of your products, from where it comes and how it arrives. And conduct periodic moral, social, and economical vetting, and assess risks of indirect affiliations or hidden networks, and maintain a verified supplier database with update cycles. So you want to make sure that your information and records are up to date, and that you have records regarding your suppliers. And an example on how you can apply that is check supplier labor practices and ownership before approving purchases. So that's something that you want to put the effort to look into. And then you want to also have local value circulation, where wealth, labor, and productivity remain within the community through internal purchasing, reinvestment, and local production. So the purpose is to strengthen autonomy, reduce dependency, and build long-term economical resilience, where you have local inputs that lead to local production, that lead to local purchasing, and local purchasing can then go back into the community through local investments to enhance local inputs, and so on. So this cycle can improve the economical resilience of the community. So key considerations that need to be kept in mind include prioritizing internal supplies and local production whenever feasible. Reinforce circular spending loops through community incentives. Encourage active local participation in production, services, and decision input. Monitor leakage points where value exits the community. So an application example is buying materials and services from community members first before you rely on external materials and services. So that should be a priority. Of course, you cannot always buy everything that you need locally, but do try to prioritize that, put that as a priority, and try to work on building local value and local production. And you also want to have fair distribution. So the allocation of resources should reflect need, contribution, and responsibility without creating inequity. So the purpose should be to ensure justice, preserve unity, and prevent internal resentment or power imbalance. So you need to ask yourself, who needs which resource right now? Are we recognizing effort, responsibility, and reliability fairly? Are there signs of resource concentration? And does the distribution produce unintended imbalances? And are there necessary distribution refinements? All of these are questions that need to be addressed. So the key considerations that you need to keep in mind are a base allocation on a blend of need, contribution, and responsibility. Prevent concentration of resources or influence. Apply clear criteria for exceptions and urgent cases. Review distribution outcomes for equity and unintended imbalances. So a way to apply this principle is to adjust distributions when reviews show imbalances. So again, in the next principle we'll talk about adaptability, but fairness also pays attention to the consequences of our decisions and actions. So we need to make sure that even if we make a allocation mistake, we adjust accordingly, and we pay attention to the needs, to the fairness, to the effort and contribution of the community. So that's also something to keep in mind. And adaptive governance, this focuses on policies, resource rules, and operational procedures. They should evolve in response to changing conditions and community feedback. So how you govern your community during times of abundance should be different than how you govern your community during times of scarcity. During times of abundance, you might want to focus more on investments, whereas during times of scarcity, you want to focus more on preservation. So the purpose of this principle is to maintain stability during scarcity and abundance, and keep the community responsive and resilient. So you need to adjust based on the conditions within your community. And key considerations are establishing feedback loop for policy revisions, so allowing there to be adjustments based on feedback. Use performance data to adjust rules and thresholds. Prepare contingency plans for scarcity and abundance. Regularly evaluate governance roles and decision pathways. So try to constantly review your decisions, constantly review your actions, constantly review your outcomes to see, is it in line with the community goals? Is it suitable for the needs of the community? So an example of how you can apply adaptive governance is streamlining procedures as per community feedback. So sometimes you might have certain rules and procedures with noble intentions, but the community is having difficulty working within these rules. So with that in mind, you might need to do some streamlining. So that's one way to apply adaptive governance. And also having transparent procedures where decision making, financial processes, responsibilities, and permissions are visible, documented, and open to scrutiny. The purpose here is to build accountability, prevent misuse of authority, and strengthen internal trust. So when community members are able and are allowed to question the decisions of community leaders, and have more and have a better understanding of what's going on, then then trust can be developed, can be enhanced between leaders and the members. So that's why it's important to have a certain level of transparency in procedures and the ability to scrutinize uh, the leadership decisions, to account for any mistakes or any controversy, to make sure that any potential misuse is actually screened out. So key considerations should include documenting processes, permissions, and financial flows clearly, so making sure that everything is traceable, publishing governance decisions and rationale, implementing open access reporting dashboards or logs, using transparency to reinforce accountability and early issue detection. So having records, being able to ask questions, all of that can help enhance integrity and trust within the community, because there are no secrets regarding how the government of the community is operating. So that's also something to keep in mind. Application example including publishing all major decisions and spending logs for communal review, so the community can review all the spending logs and the major decisions, and verify verify whether the leadership is actually doing its job correctly, or should there be a further review regarding the processes and the decision making. So that's also something to keep in mind. And the last guiding principle is collective moral safeguarding, where the community establishes and enforces ethical standards for suppliers, partners, and internal practices. So here you want to set red lines for anybody interacting with the community that they should not cross. So what are the values of the community that actors should not cross? So again, even though many of us would say tolerance is important, but so is standing firm for your values, guarding your values. So you need to make sure that you establish what you can tolerate and what you don't tolerate. So that to maintain stability while also being inclusive. So this ensures moral safety, and it shields community from unethical affiliations and maintain shared values. So you don't want to work, for example, with people that or parties or suppliers that rely on unsafe child labor, for example. That might be a red line that your community doesn't want to be associated with. So make sure that you establish your moral safeguarding as a community and collectively enforce it. So key considerations include defining clear ethical red lines for suppliers and partnerships, conduct periodic audits for compliance with moral standards, support local participation in reporting, oversight, and ethical monitoring, enforce consequences fairly and consistently across all actors. So it's important to also be fair in how you apply moral safeguarding. So avoid preferential treatment. And ways in which you can apply, an example in which you can apply this principle is to encourage community to report on any ethical concerns that might go on. And for that, you need to again establish a moral framework or a moral standard that your community wants to follow. So that's also something to keep in mind. Now, now that I proposed 6 guiding principles, I would like to also further propose 5 adaptable frameworks that you can to help you implement the guiding principles into workable community systems. They are as follows: the dynamic commons grid, needs weighted allocation loop, trust level governance matrix, system health dashboard framework, and local value chain ecosystem. So these frameworks were developed with inspiration from the PDCA continuous improvement cycle. This stands for the plan, do, check, act cycle, where you define the goal and method in the planning stage, and then when you want, then you do by executing the planned steps, and then you check by comparing results with the goals, and then you act by adjusting and standardizing improvements. So the frameworks will have adaptive loops that are based on the PDCA cycle. And why do these frameworks matter? It's because they provide structure for daily operations, they support fair and ethical resource use, they adapt to changing conditions and strengthen autonomy and resilience. So that's something to keep in mind. So now I want to go further into detail regarding the 5 proposed frameworks. So first off, you have the dynamic commons grid, where the community organizes all shared resources into functional tiers. So for example, you have the open tier where the resources are abundant, low risk for unrestricted community use. So you have an open door policy for resources like basic staple pantry items, common hand tools, and open study spaces. And then you might have another tier for managed resources. So shared items requiring coordination, upkeep, or contribution. So examples include bulk purchased goods and workshop machinery. And then you have the highly sensitive protected tier, where the resources are scarce or provide a strategic utility with strict access controls. So things like high cost equipment, community emergency fund, and protected natural zones. These are protected and require strict permissions. So these are examples of tiers that can be applied, and they follow the following adaptive loop, where you check the resource levels and you assign the tier classification based on the resource availability and sensitivity, and you update the access rules according to the tier classification, and review the community impact after a period of time to check whether the classification and the access rules are appropriate. And this is best for communities with a mix of assets, tools, storage, land, or shared facilities, where misuse or overuse can create vulnerability. So that's something to consider for using this framework. If you have lots of resources and shared resources that you want to manage appropriately, and you don't want to cause any vulnerability through misuse. So that's something to keep in mind. And then there is needs weighted allocation loop. This is a balanced distribution system that combines baseline access guaranteed to all members and needs weights based on family size, income level, responsibilities, or health status. So, for example, you might have the yellow basket, which is given to everybody, but the red basket is reserved for those in need. So the adaptive loop is um, is where you have where you assess the community needs, assign needs weight. So for each need, you give it a weightage, and you distribute based on the weightage of each need, and evaluate the outcome fairness. So you want to check whether the the results were actually fair, the distribution was actually fair, it met the community needs, everybody got what they need, and uh, nobody was left out. So that's something to keep in mind. So this is best for mutual aid groups, food distribution centers, community funds, and any community aiming for a fair, stable internal distribution. So that's something to keep in mind. And then you have the trust level governance matrix, where governance is divided into expanding levels of responsibility. So here you have three levels of trust. You have the foundational level. So here you have basic participation and access with simple duties. So this level has low responsibility, but also low low access levels. And then you have the engagement level, where members who contribute regularly and have intermediate permissions. And then you have the stewardship level. Here, these are members that have high trust, and they are responsible for oversight, decision making, and risk sensitive tasks. So the adaptive loop here is to review member behavior and update level placement and align roles and permissions accordingly. So you might have within your community a different level structure if you want to follow a trust level governance, but this is just an example of how you might want to structure it. This is best for volunteer centric, values driven communities where trust, ethics, and accountability are central. So here you want to use this system if trust within within the community members is essential, or is the central focus of the community. So that's something to keep in mind. And then you have the system health dashboard framework, where the community tracks a set of simple essential matrices. So here you follow key performance indicators, or KPIs, to decide how you want to manage and govern the economy within your community. So you monitor matrices like the daily consumption rate of the community, stock replenishment frequency, resource turnover speed, and participation rate, and average volunteer hours logged in, and event attendance, and feedback response rate, and external risk exposure, and local sourcing ratio, and things like that, in order to decide how you want to structure your community. So the adaptive loop here is to monitor key indicators and interpret changing trends and adjust operational rules, and then apply updated actions and reassess system performance. and through then you monitor again the key indicators and make adjustments accordingly. So that's the loop. What if you want to have a data-driven decision making without needing complex technology or outside experts, here you rely on the system health dashboard framework. And finally, we have the local value chain ecosystem, where you have a community built economical system that strengthens local production services and circular resource use to reduce independency and enhance sovereignty. So here you review which goods and services are produced locally, which goods and services are outsourced, and which goods and services are being localized. So they are in the process of becoming local instead of outsourced. So the adaptive loop here is map the current value flows, identify gaps and risk, strengthen local alternatives, and reinforce circular practices. So this is best for communities aiming for maximum independence, moral safety, and resilient internal economies. So these proposed frameworks are just templates for you to decide how you want to achieve economical sovereignty. You might use a mix of these frameworks, or you might develop your own frameworks. But the conclusion should be that striving for economical sovereignty, even partially, is better than full dependence on exploitative actors. So build locally and stand more securely. Thank you.